This is Careers in STEM, and we have really, really exciting guests tonight. When I read what they do, I was excited to be here also. The first up, we're going to we have Chase Joyner. Chase, you want to wave so people know who you are? Chase is a software developer and development operative for the ed tech company Unruly Studios. What a great name. And he studied at Olin College of Engineering as an electrical and computer engineer, and he's also a 3D modeler. And I know that there's already a question in the chat about that. Then we have Ada Ren-Mitchell, and she loves playful learning. She's passionate about bringing people together to share interests and address community concerns. And over the past 12 years, she's been juggling informal STEM education research and multimodal gesture research. And in her spare time, she likes to sew clothes, do bookbinding, and try new crafts with friends. Thank you for so much, both of you, for coming. And last but not least, we have Dhairya Dand. And he is an award-winning inventor and artist who runs ODD, and I'm not sure if it's ODD or ODD, but probably both. Industries, ODD, which is a futurist laboratory or factory and lab in New York City. He was previously at the MIT Media Lab, Amazon's Moonshot Lab, University of Tokyo. He was a scientific advisor to X Prize Foundation and is an artist was an artist at New Inc. in New York City, and the CUTE Center in Singapore and in Phnom Penh. He was educated in the sciences and arts at MIT, has won a ton of prizes, and each one of them will be able to tell you a little bit more about what it is that they actually do, and we'll get going with your questions. Anybody want to start?
I'm looking at Chase because you started with him.
Okay. Well, if we were doing it alphabetically like I wanted to, and I forgot about, we would start with you, Ada. So anyone can start.
I think it's nice to have it spelled out as CAD with our initials. Yeah. All right, I'm pointing to you to start, Chase.
Okay.
Yeah, I can start. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Chase.
Yeah, like I said, I'm Chase, born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm currently at Unruly Studios, which is my job that I've had for about two to 3 years now. I've been a contractor with them since 2019, and I've been working with them doing some small oddball jobs until I got a full-time job here. I'm their software developer and their development operative, and I've been doing like so much fun work with them. I work inside the software and the software side of things, where I'm working with our products Unruly Splats. Unruly Splats are these big Bluetooth-based buttons that you can connect to our app Unruly Splats, and what you can do with them is that they have these little buttons at the bottom, and you're able to interact with block-based coding that will allow you to interact with your code, and it's designed to bring play experience into like coding and play inside the same space. A little bit more about me. I grew up inside Boston. I'm from a family background full of teachers, so I've always been in education. I've always been interested in a whole bunch of different things, but I've found my passion of STEM when I got hit into middle school and I started to do programs over at MIT. That's when I really started to learn that I really like doing engineering a lot, and over time, I've found out that I'm really good with crafts and fabrication. So when I got the opportunity, one of my best friends over at MIT had gave me a recommendation to do Olin College as my college. I applied for that, and they welcomed me with warm arms there. It's been an incredible time over there. I spent 4 years there, and I became an electrical and computer engineer, and that's how I learned how to do so many of the stuff that I do today. I studied to become a computer scientist, but I learned so much more. 3D modeling became a hobby of mine. I didn't take classes inside of it, but the passion that they like, the drive that they gave me just made me do so much more stuff. I'm do a lot of freelancing stuff on the side with my 3D models, and I just do a lot of crafts and 3D printing on the side of just for fun. Uh, yeah, that's pretty much the sides of me.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, I'm Ada, and thank you, Steph, for introducing us. And I'm currently doing a job called Learning Programs Designer at the Media Lab, or Dhairya used to be. My job is mostly working with librarians to offer more creative STEM activities for people going to public libraries. So that's incredibly fun. It uses a lot of like my craft skills for my hobbies and what else? But for the most part, it's just like office work, like emails and like planning events and all of that. Um, my background, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I'm first generation, my parents are immigrants, and I had lived in New York for a little bit, in Georgia, and then um, after like going to MIT, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm here now. Like, I still didn't really know what I wanted to do, even though I was like in my undergraduate in college education. At first, I was like, oh, I like making things with my hands, so like maybe mechanical engineering because I like the way like things thinking about like how things work. Um, but that was it can be really hard, like if you're someone who likes doing things with your hands and your classes don't have that, where it's just like, oh, you're working with formulas and other problems and stuff, and you're not really getting your hands into sort of the experience of things working. Um, so I tried doing mechanical engineering to start, and then I was like, these classes are way beyond me. And so I was like, okay, like always gonna be an issue that the world needs? And I decided on like, there will always be people problems. So I switched over to brain and cognitive sciences, and that let me like take a bunch of fun classes. I took some on animal behavior and like some classes on like affect, which is feelings. And so it's really cool to be able to like choose some of my classes, which is nice. And what else? And since like college, I didn't like after I graduated, I was like, I don't want to go into research. So there was this whole journey of like I was like living out of a suitcase and staying in different friends' couches and homes for a while, and then finally was like, okay, I think I kind of um like I like design, I like sort of graphics, and I like my hobbies, and I did end up doing like gesture research for quite a few years before people were like, oh, you should do this, and those like people connections got me into like, okay, like I can do like web and graphics for sort of this education group, which led me to have other connections that people were like, oh, like, what about you, like, exploring education more deeply in these, like, fun spaces of, like, data science education where you can make infographics and work with meaningful data, or, like, maker spaces and what people are, like, what kind of STEM knowledge people are actually learning in maker spaces. So that got me sort of into, like, oh, this is, like, really fun and I like it. And then I ended up working with, like, in this job now with libraries, which is like a very open-ended, informal space for people to like learn more about what they're interested in. So yeah, that's kind of like a broad sweep of
Well,
my career. Over to you, Daria.
That's
that was great.
amazing. No, both of you have had such amazing journeys. Um, my journey has been similar and different, and it's yeah, I resonate with a lot of that. So um, I live in Brooklyn here in New York, and I run a lab called Odd Industries, and Odd Industries is sort of a future invention lab. And part of me starting this, so I started this in 2015, and me starting this was a reason of me having three lives before. So one was I had spent a couple of years in academia. So I was at University of Tokyo. I was at MIT Media Lab. I was sort of on the track um, at MIT to then pursue my PhD and then to be a professor. Um, as amazing as academia is, and academia really provides you with an amazing fertile ground for experimentation, for um, really playing with new ideas and prodding, collaborating with diverse fields. Uh, and I wanted to sort of like take that idea of experimentation. But then at the same time, I also sort of like uh, had experience working in the industry, in the STEM industry. So I was at Amazon after MIT. So a concept lab called C Lab was Amazon's moonshot lab, sort of Amazon's future lab. And over there, I ran a team which sort of like got the Alexa look to market. So this was essentially the team which thinks upstream. So from idea, essentially from like ambiguity, the way I'd like to think of it as is 0 to 1, and then a 1 to infinity. So 0 to 1 is people who are builders, people who are dreamers, people who can take something which doesn't exist, which is completely ambiguous, and then can take from zero to something that exists and um, can make it and productize it. And then there are people who are keepers, people who can grow something from 1 to infinity and can scale it up as a startup to a company. So my lab was essentially a 0 to 1 lab, which was uh, how do you from nothing create something, invent something? How do you invent something essentially? Uh, and then uh, working with teams so that that can exist in the world and exist in the hands of millions of people. And I experienced that firsthand. So I experienced the power of like one decision that my team took was able to affect 50 million people, 100 million people. So I really experienced uh, the effect of scale. So I really like that aspect of it. So experimentation and play from academia, and the idea of scale from industry. And then the third part of my life was sort of um, I've always sort of loved the idea of philosophy that art affords, the idea of sort of uh, thinking larger and beyond oneself and beyond a given problem at hand, and thinking at a larger scale, not just a 2 year scale, 1 year scale, but in a 100 year scale, in a 500 year scale, in a 5,000 year scale, in a million-year scale. And I think art, and it could be anything, it could be crafts, could be painting, could be poetry. I think art and philosophy affords us the tools to sort of think in terms of a grander scale. And I think today with technology, as much as technology and as all of you are now um, excited about STEM, I think uh, art allows us as a tool to uh, go into STEM uh, because STEM also gives us the power to create these amazing things which can impact people. I think art allows us to meditate on how this powerful tool can impact people and the ethics behind it and the idea of how this can be responsibly used. Uh, so I wanted that to be part of sort of the philosophy of that as well. So the experimentation play and the scale of it and the philosophy of art, and that essentially became Art Industries. Um, so those are the three essentially background of the roles I've played in the last 10, 15 years. Um, and my personal history has basically been that of I was born in India to a family where my dad is a plumber. He didn't finish high school, and my parents basically lived in a rural area where everyone around was essentially, uh, again, sort of like Ada mentioned, a lot of people around, would play with, build with, um, build things, and so a lot of things around me were uh, tactile, and thinking with hands was a major component of learning. And yeah, so I think like there was something about like going to school and uh, learning words and language, and then there was coming home and like playing with pipes and tools. And MIT's motto is mens et manus, which is mind and hand. And I think that's sort of exemplified in that sort of growing up in a sense. Uh, and then I just like I went to school for computer science, but uh, I just ended up learning electronics and physics as well as industrial design, and uh, yeah, just and then kept moving. Went to Singapore, went to Phnom Penh, went to London before finally coming to MIT. Yeah, uh, so basically an immigrant myself, and now live in New York City. That's pretty much my background.
Steph, you're muted.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Um,
You're still muted, Stephanie. So you just have to hit this little microphone thing. There you go. So you'll have
Yeah,
to say
no,
repeat all
I
of that.
did.
Sorry.
I have a Mac, and I'm used to hitting the keyboard, and I have to use the mouse. Sorry. Minor details. Thank you all three very much for your fascinating stories. And I'm thinking that maybe we should, if the teens who are on now would like to have questions, we could go to them, and for any or all of you. And if not, we'll go to the questions that were asked that have been sent in. So, what do you guys think? Anybody?
I have a
Question?
question.
Great, go for it.
What do you think like the hottest field in any what do you think is the hottest job in any STEM field is? Like hottest section, hottest job?
Ada?
I have an answer to that. I think the hardest job is communicating with people in any STEM field. Yeah, so like if you want to make any progress in anything, you got to know that you're like both at the same baseline, and that can be very difficult. Even if you're using the same words or anything, you have to make sure that you understand each other. So, like, sort of really, I guess, like thinking about like my choices in my degree, it was just like, oh, right, like no matter what you do, if you're working with people, I believe like the people should come first, because all of the STEM work that we do is kind of around like helping people. Does that kind of answer your question, or Chase?
Oh yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Dhairya, Chase, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think I think to add to that, I mean, definitely, like I think people, communication, managing teams, um, there is something to say about as well, about like breaking down a large problem into chunk sizes, uh, and then sort of like being able to manage a project, because it's so easy to sort of uh, I mean, you can have the best and really amazing people on your team, uh, and then it happens, and as always happens with projects, where uh, you could have like the 10 genius people, and then like you have uh, uh, a deadline for something, and then if you can't, the person who is the head scientist or the head, the principal investigator for something, uh, if they don't scope out what is something that they want to achieve in 3 months, or set unreal expectations, uh, it can really completely throw the whole project out. Uh, at the same time, yes, just like Ada said, like communication, even between interpersonal communication as well, between engineers, between technologists, between scientists, can really make a big difference between teams. Even as an individual, as a person in in a STEM field, makes a huge difference. Yeah. Uh, I think that the other part I would add, is also, um, sort of predict the future is again sort of a hard part, where you always sort of, as someone in STEM, you always at the cusp of what's possible, because you are always, um, when you're working in research labs where you have a peak of what's coming, or you have a peak of what's possible, um, and you can see from experiments that are running in the labs, where okay, this could happen in 10 years, but then there's one reality in the market, one reality where okay, what can you actually ship to people? That's a very different reality. So there's also like, how do you balance the reality between the peak of the future that you have the privilege of seeing as someone in STEM, and uh, the reality of what exists in the world. Uh, yeah, can be a bit daunting, uh, frustrating as well, to live that life where you're like the um, reality sometimes is frustrating.
Case, do you have anything to add to that? Those are great, thoughtful answers.
I can jump on more to that. That's goes in line, even with the experience that I do too. Being just communication is key on any team, no matter how big, how small. My company is only about less than 15 people, and we always need to communicate certain things in order to make sure that we can get the right amount of feedback that we need, and make sure that we can make the changes that we can in order to gain success. uh, Being a DevOps, I've definitely had to step up my communication skills. I'm not one of the best communicators ever. I'm probably one of the most silent people you ever see inside of a chat room. But I've done better of trying to get myself out there and communicate a bit more. Uh, I've yes, but that's definitely a huge thing to have with communication, especially with inter-team communication, because if you're working for a major company, major corporation, it is something where you need to make sure that those communication outlets are there and make sure that everything is flowing right. Otherwise, something is either going to get lost. And even just having that connection as well is great too. You get to experience talking to different people, seeing different walks of life. And then for me, someone who's constantly behind the computer, I don't get to engage with a customer. And it's sometimes inside of STEM, it's always about trying to make sure that the experience for whoever you're producing for is the best one. And if you don't have that like idea of that, you need to make sure that you can kind of like figure out the way to get the idea and those words out to them. Uh, yeah, and a lot of that has already been communicated from what from what was already said too.
I just want to add like a more practical sort of challenge is getting paid enough for what you love to do. And that is just like the most fundamental and one of the biggest concerns when I was in my senior year of college. I'm like, what is my job gonna be? Is it gonna pay me enough in like the place I live to like, you know, pay the rent or like feed myself or like if I have to like fully cover my health insurance? Um, can I like, you know, I can I still buy like crafts with that money on top of everything? And uh I kind of feel like it's also like this challenge of growing up and being an adult, being independent. That can be also part of it and really hard if you like didn't get much practice doing that beforehand in different ways. So I think the challenge is mostly like sort of um, like giving yourself the confidence to trust yourself that like so long as you're doing something you love, that the whatever money you make will work out eventually, and you'll like as you find the people who resonate with you.
Thanks. Important. Any other questions about right now, or should we get to the Nubular? Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I've got one. So I have really been looking into going into aerospace engineering. Are there any like lesser known secondary or post-secondary schools that you think could be beneficial to someone going into that?
Um,
That's we're talking about college, right? Lesser known colleges
Yeah.
around
Yeah.
so, can I go? Um,
Yeah.
I don't have an answer for you. So, I haven't. I didn't go to aerospace engineering. What I do have is something else, which is I think what I as an approach, what I do is when I was your age or like around that time, right? Like maybe a bit later. Um, Sometimes a way to find answers to these questions is another way to find answers rather is to um, instead of looking for colleges, look at people you admire or people or maybe companies you admire. So of course, everyone knows SpaceX, everyone knows Blue Origin, everyone knows the top 10 companies who are doing amazing work in aerospace engineering, right? And again, these are industrial companies. Maybe there are top 10 labs, JPL, there's other five. What are the interesting question is what are the next 10? What is number 11 to number 20? I think that is the more interesting question. And I think if you find those answers and then look at who are the people who work there, and I think you'll find these answers on LinkedIn. And then look at where did they go to school. And I think that's how you'll find a list of like colleges. And if you just easily you'll find like a list of like 50, 100, 200 colleges and programs. And I think apart from getting that list of colleges, I think it'll also answer 2, 3 things. And I want you to go through that, but I think I can tell you with a certain sense of guarantee, a certain sense of confidence that you'll find out that most people who are successful, or your definition of success, because I think everyone's definition of success is different. Uh, there is not much correlation between where they went to college and if they're successful or not, and that everyone takes different paths to their career. Uh, like sometimes you'll see in media this idea of uh, oh, you should drop out, or like there are startup founders who drop out of college, and while sometimes you see this media story of oh, you should go into Ivy League to be successful. I don't think either of them are true. Um, I think a successful life comes in all fashions. Um, there are people who have done all of them and are successful. So, and I think you'll find that when you do this, that there are people in all paths. So, uh, yeah, I think you should make a list of like 20 companies in aerospace that you admire. Make a list of 20 labs in aerospace that you admire. Look at the people in these companies on LinkedIn and their profiles and see their education background and see the path they have taken. And I think you'll find answers where they went and the path they've taken.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
I do have one. Someone I know is at Arizona State University, and she's the director of Interplanetary Initiative, and I think she was doing something education related. Her background isn't in aerospace, but she was part of the launch that happened last week with a space shuttle or something at in Florida. So if you want to be like if you're really excited about sort of space initiatives, there are different ways you can be part of it. And this person comes from an education background, with like I think a master's degree or something in like in education. So if you like maybe think about like is it just like what in aerospace engineering you're really excited about, what part of it, and um, and like what ways do you want to like participate in that, right? So you can be someone who does like works on human resources for aerospace, or someone who kind of like communicates the work to the public. So like the field itself includes a wide number of players and like ways in which people participate in it. Does that help a
Those
little
are
bit?
great
Yeah,
points.
that was very helpful. Thank you.
So I wonder, I'm looking at these questions, and maybe that is the next step, is to get down to the nitty gritty of what sorts of classes do you have to take to go into engineering, and how many math and physics classes are needed specifically. I don't know if you all remember any of those things, but I think for anybody going, those are legitimate questions that the people may have. Anybody have a quick snap answer? Anybody can go?
I think off the top of my head, when I was applying, I remember there was a few major requirements that I needed. So it was like I needed calculus and some AP physics or AP science class. Off the top of my head, those were some of the major requirements that I needed. So like an AP math class, an AP science class. Those are usually what are somewhat needed in order to have in order to go into engineering.
Okay, great. Anybody else? And I guess I'll just put in a plug. I spent a lot of my career teaching at a community college. And if you're like, but I don't have AP stuff, and I don't know if you do or not, because I just see your pictures. But don't be hesitant to think about taking some of those classes at a community college to build up to that. One thing you'll find about community colleges is that the teaching staff, that's all they do is they teach. And you'll often have classes that have 20, 25 people in them, as opposed to a freshman class at a huge, wonderful, powerful university. You may be in a math class with 150 people or 200 people. And so don't, just because you haven't had that stuff in high school, depending on where you live, you may not. Keep community colleges in mind. I know this is not my thing, but I have to throw that in because they really do a great job of getting people prepared for some of those wonderful, lofty ideas and
What
things.
community college do you teach at?
I used to teach at CCAC, Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, and also at Montgomery County Community College in outside of Philadelphia. And now I don't teach at any community college. I'm retired. So, but yeah, the community colleges everywhere. Just had to put a plug in for that, because a lot of people will say, I can't do it. I can't do the math. I can't do the science. I think I'd be a great engineer. I think I want to do these. I have these ideas. And sometimes that's something that people overlook. All right. This next question, yeah, Ada.
I add one more thing real quick to that is just like when you think about colleges, like colleges that give the students more attention means that they will be available to help you, like more available to help you when you're stuck. And like, and that can be much more valuable in the long run, to have people who are like supporting you, who are there for you, and who believe in you, than being in a prestigious, well, I feel like it's a little bit hypocritical because I went to MIT, but I didn't do so well in it because I felt like very lost in many of my classes, but I did good enough to like be done and graduate. But I felt like if I had more support in a college like Olin, where you can just choose what you like, build your own major, then, and you have like so many people who are attentive to the needs of the students, that definitely gives you like many like legs up into what you want to do.
Great. Thanks. All right. This next question is an out of the box question. So I think we're ready for something out of the box. Do you put self-destruct buttons on your machines? Would you advise against doing that? Wing. And now for something completely different. Anybody?
There's always a need for self-destruct button, just in case.
It makes cleanup
Yeah.
easier.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Always put a self-destruct button.
I wonder if this is a Phineas and Ferb reference. I think it depends on what the destruction causes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. How has science altered your outlook on life? And all three of you kind of alluded to it a little bit, but maybe you can get a little bit more specific if you think that there's something to add.
Yeah. I think to me, just where I specifically grew up in, uh, science to me was all about agency, and it gave me agency. Um, and I'm talking about like growing up in. What I want to paint a picture of is a picture of like growing up uh, in sort of a outskirts of a city, and this is an amazing area where like my dad was like he loved animals. So my dad had like 3 monkeys, like 8 dogs, 6 cats. Like we had like 4 5 birds, and like uh, we had like one snake in the house. So it was like when I was 8, my dad got me a pony for my birthday. Uh, so we were like extremely like almost like living in a zoo essentially. And my dad was a plumber. Both parents didn't finish high school, and I was essentially the plan was for me to be a plumber. Uh, and plumbing is very different in India than it's in America. It's not prestigious. It's not. I'm not in what I mean is like it's not even. It's not well paying. It's like really a very different thing. Uh, and what I remember is my science teacher, and I remember sort of like when I was like 8 9 years old, and I sort of like uh, she was the only one who sort of like believed in me, and yeah, it just uh, yeah, she introduced me to a computer, and the only one computer that was there in like 50 miles radius. Uh, and it changed my life. It sort of made me feel like I had agency, and agency in myself, but also agency to write a program and like control things, and like agency to uh, code something and like make something happen. And that's what I even do today, right? Which is like we all do that today in science as STEM professionals, which is STEM scientists, which is we uh, are able to sort of um, uh, we have imaginations, and we're able to sort of like manifest those imaginations into reality, and like imagine a future, and we're able to like build these uh, we sort of we're able to pull uh, uh, the future closer to our reality. And that's what science did to me as an 8 year old, living this sort of a jungle book life. Uh, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else add to that? How did science change your outlook?
Yeah, I think so. It's gonna sound really weird, but so growing up, I was always fascinated by video games. I just loved playing them, and you're probably expecting that I became an engineer because I wanted to make my own video games. No, that really wasn't the reason. I played a lot of Pokemon growing up. A lot of my family used to play it and everything. And the actual thing that made me interested in sciences was learning about the history of some of those Pokemon and just their design elements and the lore that went behind them. Like learning that some of these Pokemon were inspired from actual living creatures or even just scientific elements and just taking those elements and creating into a fantasy life. I had so much fun even taking that time and learning about them. It was probably one of my favorite things of just like after I finished playing a game, I'd always go back and just like stare into the Pokedex and just learn more about these creatures and just their origins. One of my favorite projects I ever did. It was my favorite class. It's my environmental science class in high school. I got 100% for doing this. We were our class that we were taking. They wanted us to make a brochure about environmental science and solar panels, and they said try to make it in the best way possible and put your own spin on it. And I decided to take the chance of being a nerd and just go straight into it. My school was not full of people who thought like me. So I decided to be like, screw it, let me just do this and see how far I can go with it. So I did my research. I chose two Pokemon that took solar power as like powerful elements, and I got 3 A+, because that was one of the best projects that the teacher has ever seen. And I really made me think that just anything that you can put your mind to, you can dive so deep into it, and it really changed my outlook on like the things that I like to do can project the way that I can move forward inside my career. Like I can have so much fun with these things, like even just the most minuscule things, like the toys that you play with when you're a kid. You have these big machines now that you can work with. I'm a tinkerer, so I can use a whole bunch of 3D printers and Dremels and different kits. I remember my mother said that the first career I ever said I wanted to do was be an engineer. And when I said it, I wanted to be a train engineer because I liked trains back then. But now look at me, I'm an engineer and I still like trains, but I'm not doing trains right now. But just all that stuff. There is so many connections inside the world, and I love the idea that these connections are just can be boiled down to a scientific level and just inspire you to do so many different things.
I want to add, and I'll keep this short because I know we have so many more questions. Mostly like science as like being curious and asking questions is how I view it, but also like science makes possible things you imagine and or wonder about. Like maybe some of those questions are like just kind of very mundane, like why do we have street lights, right? And it can dig into like history of like, oh, people had to like come up with the idea that we need this, and then other people have to like come up with a system, and and then it also influences like things like where you like to, if you walk around in the evening and use the streetlights, like what places feel safe. And then you can ask questions about like, oh, like streetlights and safety. Like, do having more streetlights make women feel more safe when walking around at night? And all of those questions can dig into like questions about society, or like, and then questions about like possibilities, like, oh, like um if people don't feel safe walking around at night, like what are the ways in which we can get them to feel more safe? And that can be like a whole like research path that you can do. And so science is just to me this like really fascinating space of like, oh, like I have questions about this. And when you ask those questions and you find those answers, then you can imagine like a different possibility for your world. And that can also make other people's lives so much more beautiful as well.
Thank you. Okay, we are getting a little short on time, so we're going to do a lightning round. All right. So I'm going to ask, I've like gone through these questions and I'm going to throw them out and we're going to go 1, 2, 3 with each one just super fast. And I'm so sorry, but I think that way we can get like the most information for people who are watching later as well as the people who are here. All right. Question number 1. Upside and downside of working in the STEM field. So each one say best thing, worst thing about working in the STEM field. Dhairya, you want to go because you didn't answer the last one? Just super fast.
I think upside is impact. Whatever you make touches lives of millions, if not billions, of people. Downside. I wish it had more art in it and design. Has design, needs more art.
Ada?
I think upside is like it can be very playful and creative, even though like kind of opposite of what you just said, because I'm working in playful learning. And downside would be just kind of like so much has already been established, so it can be very, very hard pushing against what has been working and kind of not working.
Okay. Chase?
Upside, you can always add something new and find something that people can enjoy and do whatever you want in order to help those whatever wherever you want to find it, whether it's the smallest nichest thing or to the biggest grandest thing. Downside, it is a lot of work. You put in as much as that you get out, and it's everything that you need to do in order to make sure that it can work.
Great answers. All right. Pivot. What is the most valuable skill to have that will either help you get hired or maybe just some quality of life stuff? Most valuable skill to help you get hired.
I think we touched on this earlier. Communication, really, both interpersonal communication, as well as written, as well as just yeah, just how you come across, just how you also uh, with your work, everything. I mean, the soft skills part of it. Yeah,
Okay,
big
great.
one.
Anybody else have something
Um,
to add?
yeah,
Ada?
interpersonal communication plus like putting the positive spin on things, like relating to people in a positive way, helps so much.
Great. Case, want to add something?
Yeah, going off of having that positivity going inside there, and at the same time have an open mind and have be optimistic with your creativity and be able to explore different avenues.
Okay, great. All right, we have two more. This one. Do you prefer hands-on or theoretical work? And do you find that one has greater benefits than the other? Chase, started nodding immediately. Go.
This one is really tough because I can go in both directions, but I personally love hands-on stuff. It's the thing that I do the most. I like doing like I do a lot of just creative design, and just modeling is one of my favorite pastimes to do, and I just love working with my hands and being able to, if I can put my mind to it, I can get it done. That doesn't mean theoretical logic doesn't it does not a positive either. It is also really great too, and being able to think about so many different things. It's just that creative process too is just awesome. If I have to think of which one is more like better, or which one is more preferred, I would say being able to put your hands on something and to experience it is definitely one of the greatest experiences that you could ever have.
Okay, great. Ada?
Um, this is coming from sort of an education point of view, which is like with hands-on, you get more instant feedback of how what you've made responds, and then you can sort of iterate and develop, have a conversation with the thing more quickly, and it can be much more satisfying. With theoretical, depending on like how big of a problem or idea that you're working with, um, you could be working in like math where you like set certain rules for kind of this like mathematical world that you're exploring, and being creative with that. Or you could be working with like the real world, which is like fascinatingly complex, and there's so many different pieces of it, and that's also really fun to think about. um, but I think that like the sweet spot is like sort of being in between those, being able to do something hands on and also be thinking about the theoretical part. And as Daria mentioned, like the future, right? Like the like very much unknown. Um, and that can being in that sweet spot where you're creating things that sort of constantly pushes on the edge of what is going to be the future is like really, really cool.
Great. All
Very
right.
satisfying.
Daria.
I think both Chase and Ada both covered most of it. I would just add that I think hands-on one thing we're in the midst of and really a blessing to be in is last 15 years, 10 years. We're in this amazing time where tools have advanced. Like you can, with Arduino and other prototyping tools, like you can really uh, uh, play with electronics with Raspberry Pi and so on and so forth. You can play and like uh, create your ideas, for example, prototype electronics without really knowing much of electronics or electrical engineering. Similarly, you can build apps without really knowing much. Uh, so I think a lot of this didn't exist like 15 years ago. So tools have advanced to a point where hands-on learning has really been really pushed to a point where I think uh, it's it's something that we should be uh, really pushing forward more and more. At the same time, there are some things in theoretical which is still lovely to do, which is more intuitive. Like, for example, a lot of mathematics, a lot of breakthroughs in mathematics and physics uh, are still very intuitive. And a lot of that is still very theoretical, it's still very intuitive, it's still not really hands-on as much per se, but it's still very creative. And so they both have their own spaces, and they hands-on and theoretical. Yeah, uh, but tools are advanced, so I think as much as you can go for hands-on. Uh, but I think if you're doing theoretical, make sure you don't go with the structured theoretical. Go for a more intuitive theoretical.
Hey,
Mm.
great. All right. This is super fast because my library here is closing like now, and I'm a volunteer, and I don't know what they're going to do to me. I have no keys. All right. Last question, super fast. What is the most fun thing you ever built?
I built these shoes which tickle your feet and take you around town. So left shoe tickle, take a left turn, right tickle, take a right turn, no tickle, keep walking, all tickle, stop. And they also help you get lost. Three tickle, three taps, and take you home. They also know your personality. So if you're in a new town, they know you like sushi. They'll tickle and take you to a sushi place. They're called super shoes if you want to look them up.
That sounds fun. Ada?
Um, I think I have two really fun things. One is like the couch you see behind me is something I made, and it's modular, it's very playful. I have a lot of different pieces, and so I can like construct my living space and change it up whenever I want. The other thing is a note tote, which is I do bookbinding and sewing, so I combine the two into one, or I have like this notebook that has tote bag handles on it and a zipper pocket and other features like you can take out the pages easily and all of that. So like having the combination of the skills coming together in one thing that is very useful to me is really, really fun.
Cool. All right. Take us home, Chase. Most fun.
Freshman year of college, didn't think I could pull it off, but I built a model replica of King Arthur's sword Excalibur all on the 3D printer. It took 3 days because I monopolized the 3D printers that we had, and it came out amazing. I still have it hanging on my wall at home.
Wow. Well, thank you all three for being just so inspiring and insightful and knowledgeable about the fields. And I can't think of anybody. I'm retired, but I'm ready to start a whole new career in STEM, except for
You
maybe
can
I
do
can't
that.
do the math yet. But so thank you all very, very, very much. And thank you, Germany and Nubular, for being here representing all of the teams that are going to be listening to this later.
Thank you.
Lark,
Thank you, Stephanie
do you
and
have
Lark.
anything to add?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nope, just a huge, huge thank you. This has been such a treat to hear from you guys. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for
Okay.
having us, and it's
Yeah, for
great
having
to see and meet you, all of you, Germany, Nebular, and Dhairya, who I haven't, heard whispers about you. All good things. Oh,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
great to meet all of you. And yeah, thank you for everyone's time. And thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Luck. And yeah, uh, thank you, Chase. Thank you, Ada. Yeah, and all the teens with all the careers in STEM, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, reach out to any of us. We all here to support you and help you. And good luck for everything. And yes,
Okay.
Thank you for being
Thank you,
here.
guys.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
I'm logging out because they're going to lock me in.
Yes, yes,
Not a
yes,
bad place to be locked in as a library, but
yes.
good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye.
See you, Germany. I'm also going to get going. Hopefully, I will be able to see see some of you guys again.